The shit's chess, it ain't checkers.
What's going on? Hopefully this playback is pretty good. Got a new phone. I went I had an iPhone, cracked it, had some other issues before that, and back to Samsung or whatever. Trying to, you know, actually the phone I got is pretty good tech, up-to-date technology. So I'm pretty happy with it so far, but hopefully it is going to be a good playback nonetheless. So getting right into this video, I just I kind of, when I uploaded the short on the statistics, I titled the statistics because those statistics are pretty accurate, being that half of all billionaires are in America are Jewish, and one third of every millionaire is also Jewish. Now, this is, I got three phones now. I had three phones before I sold one. Now I still got three phones. So I gotta sell another phone, but basically I'm gonna look up the actual demographics as far as what is the demographics of Jewish Americans, or how many Jews are in America, because what makes this so, I want to say, conspiratory or significant is that Jews make up a small, very, very small population in America. And that is what makes it like, because I was literally, I've been thinking about this for a few days, and I thought about this before, but to be honest, I really didn't know the stat. As far as I knew there was a lot of rich Jews. I knew it was a lot of billionaire Jews, but I didn't know recently, I would say the last few years, I didn't know that half of all of the billionaires are Jewish. And I definitely didn't know that 30% of all millionaires are Jewish. So let me look up the actual population in America. And okay, so the Jews are very, very much the richest, probably in America. Okay, I mean that just goes without saying. They are probably, I would say, the most wealthy in America, hands down. When you say so. So basically, let's see here. What is that? Is that percentage wise from the overall population? Okay. And this is not this my tone of voice, my sentiments are that of, I don't have any ill will or any uh uh I don't, I'm not invested in this like heavy, you know. It's just something that I've been thinking about for the last few days. So the Jews make up about 2% of the population in America. Okay, 2%, 2% of the population out of 300 million people, they make up about 2% of the population, yet they are the wealthiest group in America. 50% of all billionaires are Jewish, and a third of every millionaire is also Jewish. Now, those two statements that are actually facts, right? Believe it or not, is what I've been thinking about for the last couple days. Now, some of the white nationalists have sentiments and rhetoric as well as things that they say that are more conspiratory and I would say nefarious as far as what they think, as far as they believe that there is some type of Jewish cabal, some type of Jewish plot to overthrow and undermine particularly white people. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about that. I mean, that's what they kind of think. Now, one of the things I will point out is when I say Jewish, Jewish is necessarily there's different colors of Jewish is also like a religion and also a nationality, which is kind of tripped out because Islam, if someone's a Muslim, it's not necessarily a nationality. Now, when you think of a Muslim, you probably most likely think of someone that is an Arab, but Muslims make up all different types of nationalities. But when you think of Jews, when they say Jews, it's a religion and also a nationality, which is kind of interesting, kind of tripped out because they the only ones that really have that designation as far as also being a religion and also a nationality. But nonetheless, again, only 2% of the population, 50% of all billionaires, a third of all millionaires in the United States. So when I bring this chart here, I'm gonna be losing these soon because uh I'm definitely not Europe. I'm not a European Jew for sure. I don't have no European Jew money. But this chart here, a lot of the Jews are on the right. They are on the right of this chart of this wealth distribution chart here. They are pretty much on the far right of this chart as far as their overall wealth, even being a small percentage, only 2% of the population. Now, the interesting thing about Jews, particularly European Jews, um, they pretty much you can't okay, they basically I don't want to say cosplay, but they actually designate themselves as white in America. They check the box of Caucasian or white because in actuality they are, but they don't necessarily intertwine with white culture because basically most of the wealth in this country is Jews and WASPs. When I say WASP, I'm talking about white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Okay. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants are primarily the ones that have most of the wealth and Jews. So when you combine the Jews with the WASPs, they make up a bulk of the millionaires and billionaires. But Jews alone, only being 2% of the population, about roughly, 2% is, roughly around basically around 6 million or 6 to 7 million as far as Jewish people in America, or those that designate themselves Jewish. They make up half of the billionaires and a third of the millionaires in the United States. But when you combine the WASPs with the Jews, you would you would basically that would cover the other most of the other 2/3 of the millionaires and the other half of the billionaires in this country. Okay. So that being said, this is not necessarily about the WASPs. This is about the Jews, which again only make 2% of the population, yet half of all billionaires, third of all millionaires. Now I keep saying this because I want you to understand how significant this actually is, because this is something that is definitely significant. You know, it's something that, like I say, this is just kind of me, kind of just getting something off of my mind, just trying to work this out, talking to you as well, giving you some type of, content, but also trying to work this out, kind of, get this off of my dome, right? Because again, I've been kind of thinking about this, man, for the last couple days, and it's, I didn't even watch that whole video. I gotta watch the whole video. With the short, it did, like, I think it was like 2K views. um I gotta watch it in its entirety, but a lot of this stuff I already know, that what they do as far as their things that they do, like they focus on generational wealth. They primarily focus on generational wealth. That's more important to them than, other people. They might not be. Most people are not concerned about generational wealth. The average person, they don't even probably. The average person is probably what, living check to check, because they got bad spending habits, bad budgeting or no budgeting, bad savings habits, right? After that is, they don't probably have enough money to retire. So having some generational wealth is like, I mean, a very small percentage of people that are probably are very serious about that. And generational wealth is not necessarily life insurance. That's Life insurance is just what it says. It's just insurance in case something happens to you. That's not necessarily generational wealth. Now you can have certain things within it. Is certain, things that you can have, I'm sure, but that's not necessarily considered generational wealth. Okay, you just got some policy for $1 million. Okay, it's better to have that than not. But generational wealth is just what it says. Generational wealth, you passing on assets to your loved ones. The most important thing is to pass on your knowledge, your know-how, to your children, right? To your grandchildren. So they can pass the baton. You could pass the baton to them, and they can, continue on. So, I mean, I just, I don't really have nothing too much as far as, I'm not, I mean, I'm on my phone, so I'm not sharing any videos or anything. It's just kind of pretty much off the cusp of just conversation. I was just thinking about this topic, this, this idea, because I am someone that's, trying to aspire to, kind of scale up the ladder, right? Build my momentum up, right? And you think about it, right? You like, well, let's say you a millionaire tomorrow, right? Tomorrow you wake up, you're a millionaire. Well, you're in a club that a 30% of people in that club is actually Jewish. And of course, mostly everybody else is, either white Anglo-Saxon Protestant or white Anglo-Saxon Catholic, you know, um, that you will be around. You won't be around that many. If, let's just say you around nothing but millionaires, or you in a circle of millionaires, it's not going to be that many people that are black in that group. Very, very few. So that being said, it's pretty much they have definitely cornered the market of wealth in America. Now, one of the things I do know about Jews in America that a lot of people don't know is they primarily um, benefited and profited off of the transatlantic slave trade. They were heavily invested into the slave trade in America and also in Europe. That's why they got really, really rich in Europe as well as in America. That is also a fact. Okay. Now the thing is that Jews also consolidate their wealth very easily because, see, here's the thing, right? Where most people are kind of all over the place. Like what I mean by all over the place is, people marry who they want to, they sleep whoever they want to for the most part, or people get whoever they can get with. Well, with Jews, they don't do that. Okay. Jews, even Muslims, they have kind of a closed circle. The only way you can get with a Jew is you be Jewish. Okay, so there you go. If you're not part of the club, the Yarmulke club, you cannot marry a Jew. You can't, get with a Jewish woman unless she's non-secular or non-secular. You can only get with basically Jews can only get with Jews, Muslims can only get with Muslims. Now, the men, I believe they can get with other women of like different religions, I believe, but that's men tend to control, not necessarily in America, but other countries, they can control the children more. So they can kind of like control control how their children are raised or even raise their children themselves. Or in essence, they'll be bringing this person that they have children with into the Jewish they'll be bringing their children into the Jewish religion. Their wife, I don't think they have to be Jewish, but I think the women they have to marry a Jewish man. So that they have a control loop as far as who stays within the club. It's a closed club. And only way you can get in the club is you actually be Jewish. Okay. So there you have it, right? A lot of people probably don't know that. Like they don't really understand that, right? That religiously you'd have to be a Jewish person to marry in to the Jewish, family. Very similar to Islamic tradition or their customs and whatnot. Now, some Muslims, but primarily Arabians, are rich as well. They are particularly considered Semitic people, both Semitic people, but the Jews are very richer. They're very much wealthier than the Arabians. And again, one of the things I definitely believe Jews do in America well is blend in with other white people. You don't know who's like Jewish. Like, okay, you know, you don't necessarily some of them have features like long noses and maybe certain look. Certain people probably would be able to point it out, but not all of them. You couldn't spot a white person that's a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant or a white Anglo-Saxon Catholic from a Jewish person. So they blend in with the greater white society uh, without being targeted or marked as, okay, this is a Jew, this is not a Jew. Like some people can tell, most people can't. Okay, and it's like for the most part, most people can't differ a Jewish person from a non-Jewish person that's white. So they have basically white privilege and also Jewish privilege. So it's like almost like two superpowers within one. So a lot of people don't believe. I mean, I believe, I listen to poor white people. They don't believe any that white privilege actually exists, because if it did, why would they be living in a trailer park? Why would they be driving a Chevy Cobalt that's, from 2012, if white privilege existed? Because I mean, they didn't get, I mean, obviously they didn't get the memo. That's what they're saying. And to a certain degree, it's not like white people are handing out money to white people. That's just not how that works either. Like the white Anglos, all white people, whether you call, most of white people are white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, white Anglo-Saxon Catholics, or very small percentage Jewish. And then you have Orthodox, you have the Eastern Orthodox Church, you know, that's part of white society as well. But basically it's not like they all just giving each other handouts like that. Like it's just like, oh, here you go. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't did any research as far as, like, let's just say on poor white trash or anything like that, like why they have it hard versus a finance guy that went to Harvard or Yale or Brown University or something that use those corporate channels, or even maybe even networking to land in Wall Street or land in finance, and make a couple $100,000 a year or $500,000 a year or more in certain corporate positions, versus white guy that's in a trailer park that his only leg up is maybe working in a factory, getting a position in a factory, maybe maybe getting a looking the other way, as far as like if they got some type of background or drug problem or something like that, that they'll still get hired. And as long as they show up and work, maybe their foreman or manager may look another way. But basically, yeah, the poor whites, their argument is, where is white privilege? Because I didn't get that, I didn't get that privilege. I if it, because in theory, because I mean, I see a lot of poor white people in Indiana. A lot of people in Indiana, period, are just, because of the makeup of Indiana, because it doesn't really fully have financial centers like Chicago. um Indianapolis is over 100 miles away from Northwest Indiana. Northwest Indiana is more close to Chicago than Indianapolis. So Northwest Indiana closest financial center is Chicago. So it feeds the whole Chicagoland area. So like basically Indiana itself, it doesn't really have a lot of what Illinois has as far as these centuries old, robust, refined financial centers. It doesn't have that. And basically it's underdeveloped. I would say about 100 years behind Illinois as far as development. it doesn't have a lot of the wealth that Illinois has. So you do see a lot of white people that are, kind of struggling, you know what I'm saying? And um when you talk to amongst them, it'll be a hard sell to talk about white privilege because they don't necessarily, in theory, they're not necessarily benefiting from white privilege and definitely not benefiting from Jewish privilege as others, maybe that, if you talk to some white guy that his parents have a house in Hyde Park, in Chicago, Illinois, and has had the property for 50 years or more, and it's worth over $1 million, and they are a graduate of University of Chicago and they make over six figures. Well, obviously it's something to play as far as what your parents what type of momentum they had versus you kind of piggybacking off of that and using that to your advantage. Well, a white person that, in somewhere in Indiana or wherever, if their parents didn't have a lot going for them or didn't have a lot of momentum, well, you know, they miss, they don't really have, I mean, it still doesn't matter as far as I guess privilege is concerned. But I mean, it is something to say because some people don't know how to do certain things. Some people don't know how to apply for certain things, right? Some people don't have ambition. Some people might have drug problems. Some people might have, they might struggle with alcoholism, laziness, whatever, or lack of opportunity, and they just don't know what to do. Well, um, basically what I'm saying is maybe some white people don't know how to use white privilege. They don't know how to exercise it. I mean, maybe they don't want to, not everybody wants to be a rich white person if they're white, or they don't really, they might not want to be bothered. Like it's certain things you still probably have to do. I mean, you might have to go to college, right, or university. You might have to research certain things, read a lot, read and research a lot, might have to, accumulate some type of capital, that is a pretty sizable amount, 10,000 or more at least, or I would even say $100,000 or more. Have to, build your credit up. It's still certain parameters that is still needed. It's not like, okay, just because you're white, you're just gonna automatically be privileged. In certain regards, maybe I would say in the court system, definitely I've definitely that's where I've seen white privilege the most. But as far as wealthy white people, there's still a lot of white people that they're struggling probably worse than some of the people that whether they be black, whether they be Hispanic, and then maybe some of those people might try to they might really dialogue a lot with the far right, the 4chan movement, the people talking about, um, the immigrants and the Jews and the blacks and the Hispanics or whatever, as far as blaming others for their lack of opportunity. A lot of the opportunity is just even the Jewish paradigm, wealth paradigm, if you want to call it. A lot of it is patrilineage. Your parents were wealthy. They had certain knowledges. They passed that on. They passed both of those on to you, and then now you're wealthy. Well, if your parents basically they were in debt and living in a trailer park and they died, and then now you're, left only with this massive amounts of debt in his trailer park, kind of similar to the story if you ever watch Ozarks in on Netflix, very similar to that type of, family paradigm. If your existence is that, you're going to have problems. It in white privilege not is not necessarily going to pull you out of that, and a lot of what the circumstances that people have is primarily because their parents they had a kind of a situation where their parents didn't really have that much momentum, or maybe even they had reverse momentum that dragged the children down. Like if your parents had a drug habit or they were in and out of jail, that's like reverse momentum. You're at, at a deficit. You're at some type of you're putting money to help your parents get out of jail. You're giving your parents money. That's reverse momentum. Like that's, your parents are supposed to, again, we're talking about Jewish people, generational wealth, uh, being a tool that Jewish people primarily use. Well, if your parents are on drugs and going in and out of jail, that's not helping you with that. That's not helping you in your uh upbringing and trying to grow financially and in life and what so so it's still a paradigm, a family paradigm that's important here when we think about Jewish wealth or just even wealth overall. Well, if your parents are fucked up, then chances are you're going to be fucked up, and you'll have to kind of get away from your parents and their problems and issues in order to escape all of that. And then hopefully you can find someone else to mentor you or show you the ropes. So those things are important, very and very very important. I mean, one of the things that I when I talk about, white privilege, one of the great movies, I forgot the name of this movie, but yeah, this is called The Banker. The Banker kind of goes into that whole white privilege dynamic, because basically that's what the movie The Banker is kind of about, what it's about. Because basically the two well, basically the main characters in the movie, they had a problem where they they were very financially astute individuals. They had a lot of knowledge and know-how, but one of the problems that they had was they were dealing with 1950s, 1960s, primarily 1950s racial prejudice, racial, basically racism. They couldn't get certain banks started because they were black. They couldn't get certain funding because they were black. And it wasn't necessarily a law. They did have racial covenants in real estate going back during that time, right? You could still see the racial covenants if you go into your local recorder's office. You can see those old racial covenants in the actual deeds on these titles of these properties. But yeah, those were the things that really hindered a lot of black people, even if they were uh financially, even if they even had money, you couldn't do certain things because of the racism. Like opening up a bank and lending out money, getting certain funding for real estate projects. They had a hard time getting that accomplished because of just based off of the fact that they were African American. Now they used the white guy that basically in the movie that had no knowledge of financial, had no financial knowledge, no formal education, past probably high school, and they basically used his white privilege in order to get funding and to grow, to basically build up momentum and get capital. And very much that movie was from the 1950s, 1960s period. I will say that that kind of whole, I will say, because of the recent findings from Wells Fargo with basically Wells Fargo and other institutions charging higher interest rates for Black and Hispanic mortgage applications, even lower appraisals, values once that appraiser found out the owner of the home was African American. That still is very relevant to this day. 2025, there is an aspect of racism that still holds very much true in the financial world. Now, when I say the financial world, I'm talking about banking. I'm talking about like basically loans, insurance, investments, basically overall just the financial world in not so much the financial world, but the financial capital systems in America. Those individuals, because basically dealing with people. It's not like you just gonna fill out something and don't nobody know who you are. You're dealing with people, and those people, like I said, primarily are white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, white Anglo-Saxon uh, Catholics, and also Jewish and Eastern Orthodox are the primarily bulk of individuals that make up most of the wealth, and they're white, and yes, they are racist. So you still have that, those gatekeepings and those things that are done. Now, my idea of racism, I haven't really, gone into it, but my idea of racism, as far as what I've learned to be, is it's human competition. It's basically other people trying to cheat other people out of prominence and gain, financial gain, because basically capital is how people are controlled. That's one of the main things of capital is that's how people are controlled. A lot of people are controlled based off of capital, whether you have it or don't. Now, with you not having a lot of capital, you are influenced to make certain decisions, such as working for owners of businesses. You being a worker instead of an owner, that is based off of how much capital you have. Well, if you have capital, you have enough money to actually be an owner. You could start some type of ice cream shop, or you could start a deli. You could, and then you'll hire people, and then you're an owner of this business, and you can hire workers. Well, not everybody knows how to do that, obviously, but nonetheless, most people are, again, influenced off of how much capital they have or don't have. Well, if you don't have a lot of capital, you're influenced to make certain decisions based off of the fact that you don't have a lot of capital. And the thing is that's why others don't want you to have the capital. Particular people don't want you to have the capital because that capital puts you into a certain realm of power that you don't necessarily you become more of an owner instead of a worker, so it's a power move. I'll just say, nonetheless, and that's what racism is, and racism is getting, in my opinion, a little harder to practice because you got a lot of people that are watching. You got a lot of people that are able to file certain litigations and basically set things straight, because you're not supposed to do this, right? You're supposed to follow certain protocols, for certain procedures, and that's the law. That's almost pretty much the law, right? Because not supposed to discriminate on someone as a particular race or creed or color, right? That's not supposed to be done, but people still do it. Okay. Primarily non-black people. But you got black people also practice certain types of racism and sexism. I will say I see a lot of sexism from black women. A lot of black women that may be misandrous or misandrous or they, if they don't like you or whatever, they might, if you're at a hotel, they'll give you a room that is, room that is supposed to be for repair, for, needs to be repaired. Is something messed up with it, um, they'll, give you some type of bad favor, make you wait longer, based off of the fact that you're just a black man, and they team hate black men, so it's certain elements of different things like that. But I would say, for the most part, I definitely, the people that practice a lot of different discrimination, I would say mainly are non-black. Throughout my life, obviously, in America, most of the discrimination or anything that I've faced usually was from non-black people. Okay, so it took me a long time to figure out why people did that, but it's basically, in my opinion, this is my theory. My theory is that it's human competition. It's a form of human competition. Now, one would say, well, why does this people try to compete more than others, or why do they try to, quote unquote, cheat more than others? Well, you can kind of go into that, but I'm not necessarily going into that tonight. But I mean, that is something that, kind of think about. But I definitely have my opinions on that. But um, the thing is that, yeah, there is a particular idea when it comes to white privilege, where some say it doesn't exist, some say it does exist. Even, white people is on video admitting, yes, I do get certain privileges. By being white, I do get certain doors open and certain opportunities open. you know um I get, certain opportunities. So, the thing is it's it comes to be about, well, what if you have someone that has Jewish privilege and also white privilege, right? They have two cars that they can use. Well, how much powerful is that to use? Okay, someone that has Jewish privilege and also white privilege at the same time, what can you do with that? What kind of Pokemon card is that? Or is that a dual Pokemon card? Is that like a gold card? Like, you combine white privilege with Jewish privilege. What do you have, like, you have some golden Pokemon card that you can whip out, and you can open up all kinds of opportunities and, I mean, doors and portals, you know what I'm saying? And very much so, I'm being comical, but to a certain extent, that is true. That is what I'm seeing from. That is what the reality is for a lot of how Jews are so wealthy. Okay, because they can basically uh tiptoe on both avenues, being white, being socially accepted as being white, and then also being Jewish at the same time. So that's something that is at play. That's a role to play amongst all of the other things, checking all the boxes, right? Education, family, generational wealth thoughts. I mean, or planning, group economics. It's a tight club. That you can only get in this club unless you only way you can get in this club is being Jewish, right? So if you're not Jewish, you're not in the club. So it's a thing. It is definitely something that I'm not gonna say too much, but I have saw some of the kind of on Twitter the white nationalist rhetoric, and I will say, in my opinion, there was some type of propaganda that was pushed uh post World War II. That might not necessarily be the narrative that you think is like what we were possibly taught in school about World War II, and why Adolf H did what he did. It might be something that this guy was this evil dude, but then there's a lot of other things that people don't really think about, or really want to dialogue about, as far as the power, the hidden powers and possibilities that a group of people can have, that consolidate wealth and consolidate closed groups, and overpower other groups with that cap that wealth, in that closed circle of wealth and consolidation, that some will argue it might not seem like it's something that is not nefarious, but it may be nefarious. It may be nefarious if you have a small group of people consolidating and taking on interest from other people, and other people are poor, and then they're rich or wealthy, which is even more. Rich and wealthy is two different things, right? Wealth is way more money than riches, right? It's very hard to lose wealth. Riches, you could be rich on a weekend. You could get rich on a weekend, or one day. You can go to the casino and get rich one night. You can go to Las Vegas and win $500,000 or $1 million, and now all of a sudden you're kind of rich, and you could lose it the next day or the same day. Wealth is harder to lose, more consolidated. So yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts. I don't really have too much more about it, but I mean, it is something to definitely think about. I'm gonna continue to think about it. I kind of to a certain degree, uh I don't I will say it kind of seems powerless to it's almost like, what can you do about it? I mean, well, these people are rich, right? That's not something new. How long have you known Jewish people being rich or wealthy or whatever? That's not something new. Well, what the fuck are you going to do about it? I mean, obviously you're not going to do anything about it, but you want to actually be rich, you want to be wealthy, you want to pass on some generational wealth to your children. Well, that's the hard part, you know. And the thing is that one of the things that I definitely have done, one of the a few things that I've done, is I've shape shift my mind to think more to enrich myself. I don't think, oh, I'm going to get a whole bunch of money, and I'm going to buy a whole bunch of clothes and jewelry and fashion and blow my money. I want to use my money or any possible future money to make me more money, right? To use and that's what the Jews have done in years in over the centuries, using interest and everything like that. Because I did a live stream about a month ago. I don't know how long ago, and I gave out some strategy on what you should do if you get a whole bunch of money, which very few people actually will probably in their lifetime get a whole bunch of money. But I told people how you can use the power of interest and never you will never lose that money or um will go broke ever again. And that's what a lot of people don't know. I mean, I'm at this point in my life, over the years and years of research and reading and countless books I've had and education. At one time I was a business major in college, and being a grandson of a multimillionaire business owner, I learned some things, even going out in the world trying to, conduct business myself and, learning some things from, falling flat on my face. Uh, I know some things that, some people that have not had that understanding would not know. And that is, uh, I call it the 33 method, basically. You basically let's say you get $1 million. You just take 1/3 of that. You could go buy whatever you want, car, house, whatever. You take that money and you go buy whatever you want with it. The other 2/3, put it in a basically high yield savings account. The other 3/3, put it in a brokerage account or a money market account that's growing interest. You basically, depending on what the interest rate of the bank, let's just say like Amex, they giving out like 3.6% yield, APR yield. Well, 3.6%, let's just say, of $2 million is about $72,000 a year. But you do the math, you break that down, you'll have what, like $300,000 left, $333,000 left. You might, depending on what that interest rate is. Let me get my calculator here. Basically, the rule of thumb is you just only take a distribution of half of that, and the other half will be collecting interest, and you basically will never go broke, because basically forever and ever you'll just be making money off of interest. But let me put this in here, times 0.036. So you will basically get, like, every single month you would get like 11, like 12 grand. You should only get like 6 grand from that account. Don't take the whole 12 grand. Other account do the same thing, depending on like if the APR is about the same or maybe more. So you would have like 12 grand every month coming in your account. Could basically live off of that, use that to pay bills and everything like that. You'll never go broke. You'll never be on the fucking unemployment line, none of that shit again. But most people are not. It took me 40 plus years to have this understanding. Most people do not have this type of financial understanding. Okay, so it just certain things like that, even above that, like a lot of these people, a lot of these Jewish people, they're like white people that are like fucking Harry Potter, as far as how smart they are. They know more wizardry when it comes to accounting methods and financial methodologies and formulas more than I do. Okay, obviously that's why a lot of them are millionaires and billionaires. It's a lot of things when it comes to financial math and financing and accounting practices and things that you could do and formulas that you can do with money that almost on some like wizardry type shit, like money magic. Like a lot, some of these Jews, they're into some magical shit. I'm not gonna lie to you. They are into money. I talked about money magic and different types of things. I mean, and then of course dark magic and stuff like that too. And I'm not gonna go down, and I ain't going down in the tunnels and shit. But they be doing some shit. They definitely be doing some Aleister Crowley type shit. But nonetheless, there is a lot of things that you could do with money. It's a lot of things that you can use to grow money that some people just don't know how to do, or they're not disciplined enough to do. Most people, this is what most people do, and I've said this from time immemorial. Most people are liability minded, meaning they got a job usually, and then what do? They take the money to pretend like they're rich. To their lifestyle is a pretentious lifestyle. So they have a car that's brand new. They have a house or a townhouse that's very good condition that they have a mortgage for, that they pay for, and it's a borrowed lifestyle. And basically, I'm not I'm not like trying to talk about somebody, or I'm not like making fun of anybody or anything like that. This is what most Americans do. I'm talking all racial demographics. The only problem with this borrowed lifestyle is if you lose your job or lose any type of momentum, you get sick, whatever the case may be, this this folds. And I've seen this happen in 2008 with the mortgage collapse, with the Great Recession. People lost their house, they lost cars. I lost, I had a car, I lost it. I mean, basically, that's the problem with that borrowed lifestyle based off of liabilities. If you're an asset focused individual, like I train myself to be, you think about assets, not necessarily liabilities. Who gives a shit about a brand new car trying to keep up with, everybody in the Joneses? You get you a car that you pay it off as fast as you possibly can, or you pay for a car in cash and you bank whatever that car note is. I think they said the average car note is like $700. You put $700 into some type of IRA or some type of brokerage account, and you're investing your money in the S&P or some type of ETF or dividend stocks, and you're trying to you're enriching yourself. Like when you train your brain to think assets versus liabilities, that's when you start to change the paradigm, where you start to become richer in life. Because most people think liability focused, where they go get credit card, and it's primarily based off of trying to pretend like they already um are well to do. So they go out and they get a fashion bag and clothes and all of this, and they're basically pretending to be rich. Well, rich people, they don't pretend to be rich. They just go be rich, And I know I lost people in there. I saw some people looking at me, and then I lost them because I'm basically like I'm a Jewish rabbi on this motherfucker, telling you the truth about how you live, and it hurts your feelings. I used to be that person. I used to be just like everybody else. I used to go get credit cards and max them out because I wanted to buy stuff to show off. I wanted to, live a lifestyle based off, try to live some type of quote unquote middle class lifestyle. I used to try to go get brand new cars so I can look good in my brand new car or my car. I used to go out and buy a whole bunch of clothes. And then next thing you know, I got a notice on my door for back rent, a 5 day notice or whatever. And it's like it's certain things that I used to do just like everybody else do. Over time, getting my head kicked in, I learned how to not do those things, how to reverse that mindset to be thinking asset focused, not liability focused. Don't care about what trying to pretend like I'm rich. I'm actually trying to be rich, not trying to look like I'm already rich to other broke people and other rich people. That's kind of like something that you can work on trying to do if you having that problem. And a lot of Americans are having that problem. I already know they are. And it doesn't, and it's race unabated. They're having those issues. But it's a hard pill. It's a hard pill to swallow because I'm not gonna say everybody can be like me or whatever, because it's kind of hard to be like me or hard to be asset focused, because asset focused means it's only how much money you have to buy assets. And that may, you might only be able to have enough money to buy a house in a quote unquote sketchy neighborhood, and you got to fix the house up, and get it habitable, and then renovate it and make it, basically a grade A home, so someone can buy it and live in it, and you can make some profit. It's hard to do that. Some people, they want to have a particular lifestyle and they don't mind um borrowing to accomplish that. Well, the problem with that is the pro is you get that lifestyle, you get a taste of that lifestyle. The con is that lifestyle is heavily interest, a lot of interest involved, and you overpaying for those liabilities to other rich and wealthy people, and you're getting robbed of future wealth and riches every month that you pay for those liabilities, because you're overpaying because of interest over time. So when you use interest can be used against you, or it could be used for your gain. A lot of people, because they're liability focused, they're using interest and it's going against them. When interest is you're supposed to profit off of interest, not have interest profit off of you. And I guess that's one of the, things as far as, the whole Jewish paradigm of wealth that a lot of people don't do, that I do it. I did it over time because I learned, how to do certain things. It's not necessarily related to being Jewish or being a Jew or having some type of Jewish methodology, but they definitely understand interest and how it could go against you and how it could um go towards you becoming rich and wealthy. So what most people do is they use interest uh that goes against them, because they're getting these liabilities that they can't pay for, and the interest makes it where, like for example, a average house, 30-year mortgage, let's just say the house is $300,000. The interest rate over 30 years, let's say 6-7%, whatever, you're going to pay 1.5 on average for that house. So that $300,000 house, it's not $300,000 that you're going to pay the bank over that 30 years. You're going to pay that bank most likely somewhere between $750,000 over a 30-year period. So just think about that when it comes to generational wealth and wealth in general, you actually are robbing yourself, because that it doesn't matter that you get time. That's what old people used to call credit. They used to call it time. You're getting time to pay off that house, but basically you're overpaying for that house because you wouldn't necessarily go to that you wouldn't go to the closing at the house, or you wouldn't pay $750,000 for that house, but you'll pay it over 30 years because you're paying on time. You get in the benefit to pay over time, but you're gonna spend about $750,000 or possibly even more for that $300,000 house. And that's just one example of how interest can work against you than for you, and you know, again, I know these are not comfortable things. It's like, bro, genius, Abdul, what do you do? What the hell can I do? I mean, I gotta have someplace to live. Well, you gotta be very, very crafty. You might have to house hack, like get a building, live in one building in a top floor or the bottom floor, and then rent out the other two apartments, and then do it again, and then you do that a couple times. The buildings all pay for themselves. Those are some of the things that you could possibly do to kind of you know go use the system of credit to work for you. You have some tenants paying you rent, that will go towards your mortgage, and then over time you'll build up some type of uh what do they call equity on these properties, and you'll end up owning them more every month you pay that mortgage, and you're not necessarily paying it in theory, the tenants are paying it. So yeah, it's some things that you could do, or buy a house in an undesirable neighborhood and beautify it, and then other people do that, and then you have basically a situation where you have gentrification where the housing values go up. That's what happened in Gary, Indiana. I'm kind of trying to be on the benefit of that, so it is possible that you can buy something possibly somewhere else, maybe another state, if your state is too expensive, but buy something somewhere in an undesirable neighborhood, fix it up, and sell it and make some profit, and then maybe you could buy the second property in an area where it's a little bit more desirable, but not super desirable, right? Or not, like everybody, it just gets, you kind of got to scale up, is what I'm trying to say. With real estate, and to the point where you could be able to buy a mansion for cash, because you got it, because you scaled up. That's the theory. Okay. It's not difficult. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not difficult, but it is possible. Okay. You got to think about this. Other countries don't have credit. Like, they don't have the credit system like the United States. So they already know if they want to buy a house, they have to pay cash for the house. It's no mortgages. So just want you to think about that. So I'm gonna let you guys go. I have satisfied what I wanted to talk about on here. And if you have anything to add, you can add those in the comment section of this video. What are your thoughts on this? And this situation where you have 2% of population owning, basically having 50% of all billionaires and a third of all millionaires in America.